What up, everybody? It's your boy Prez. Happy baseball season. Yeah, that's right. Leading off this podcast with baseball season because that's how I fucking feel today. And I feel some type of way because we have a special guest who is not a first-time guest. This won't be his last time. He is Kris Pursiainen of WFUV Sports, of Knicks Film School, of the Knicks Film School Draft Class Podcast, of Fordham University, of the state of New Jersey, of what else do I got here? Of
allegiance
allegiance
to Shake Shack.
Allegiance to Shake Shack. Smart. See, this is why I knew you're cool. And then also fellow Sharif Cooper regret haver, among other things.
Yeah,
and
let's just stick with that one.
Yeah,
not mention the nine other Guangdong Tigers. I gave a lottery grade.
It's okay. I'm sure Guangdong appreciated your constant scouting pro bono for their department. He's here. I wanted to have him on the podcast this week. So y'all will be hearing this Thursday. We're recording this Monday before hopefully the Knicks beat the shitty Houston Rockets. And Kris released his top 10 of his draft board on Twitter. And when you released it yesterday, right?
This morning.
My bad.
Just because you got the sneak peek yesterday doesn't mean everyone did, man. Come on.
Sorry, listeners, you don't have the plug, but I do have the plug. And it's really, first of all, shout out to Zach, friend of the pod, for the graphics. Continues to knock it out the park, as always. You can see his work anywhere where good Knicks content is, really, particularly on the Strickland. So I want to talk a little bit about the guys you have in your top 10 and then some other dudes who the Knicks might be in a place to consider, right? I mean, Dallas is floundering perhaps too much. Although the NBA did us a favor and rescinded Luka Doncic's 16th technical foul, so he'll be playing today, and Halliburton and Miles Turner and Buddy Hield are all not playing today. So it looks like for once Adam Silver and Mark Tatum are throwing us a fucking bone, which is nice. Hopefully Dallas doesn't go and squander it, because even though this is a top 10 that we're going to talk about, there's a good chance the Knicks pick will be right outside of that if we keep it at 11 or 12, which means some of the players on this top 10 may slip to the Knicks pick. So all the more reason to discuss these players who, if you would have asked me a month ago, back when Dallas's pick was like 19 or something, I would have been like, yeah, I mean, I'll talk about them, but like, I'm not going to get my hopes up. Good things don't happen to us.
Yeah, I think I learned my lesson. And, you know, for me, it's not us as a Knick fan. It's just someone, you know, now that I am not a fan of anyone. But for me covering the Knicks, I have realized quickly that everything that can go wrong will go wrong, and not in the sense of, oh, like the team is in a bad position. It's in whatever coverage you had prepared is useless. And by that, I mean, I, you know, much like you did a multiple month-long draft show last year. I don't think I brought up Trevor Keels one goddamn time. Okay. Not only did I look at him and be like, the Knicks wouldn't draft him, but I also focused on like guys that I had in the top 30 because the Knicks might have them in the top 18. Right. And they walked away with just Keels. My first 3-4 games as a beat reporter, the Knicks were up by 13, 14, 15, and 23 in those 4 games. And this was around halftime that they were up by that margin. They went 0-4 in those games, and I'm 4-8 at games. The games I've attended as a beat reporter, the Knicks are a team that's 10 games above 500.
Is it too late for you to change professions?
And I only report on them when they are at home with their home crowd, with home court advantage, with a rest advantage on the other team. And they are 4-8. And I started 1-7. So this is the 4-8 is a real, renaissance of a record for me. I just know to expect everything that I wasn't expecting. So yes, I'm ready to talk about, guys that weren't even in my top 10 because they'll probably go top 10. I'm ready to talk about guys that, when I put out my top 14 very soon, when I expand the 10 to 14 and put that out soon, there are going to be guys that don't go in there that will go in the top 14 in real life. So, lots of guys to talk about. Never, if I'm on this show, take my board as like the guys to talk about. If I've put out a top 10 board, it means I've deep dove 20 plus. If I put out 14, it means 25, right? So like, yeah, I love talking about both the guys I love and don't love in relation to everyone else, because I still, this is a really good class. Like, I would take someone who will probably go at like 16 in this class. I would take them like top 12 last year. Like it's good. It's good. It's fun. This is a really fun one. And I almost feel maybe there's a pressure on the draft community to really enjoy this class, because next year, I think the lotteries and top 10s are going to be so different in the sense that really the prospect class is going to be, not as gleamingly gorgeous to choose from. And you'll see more variance. So I think this is a really interesting year, because when there is differentiation, it's not as much because there are such varying opinions on guys. It's really more because there are so many talented guys that, you could put 22 different guys in a lottery in a different amalgamations, and it'd all add up as long as you've got the same couple guys at the top.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think that's definitely what makes this a fun class, is the depth of both top and middle end talent. So this is how we're going to do it. First, I'm just going to go through the guys just without any commentary, and then we can get into the particulars. And I got a couple questions lined up that are fun. So first is Victor Wembanyama. Surprise, surprise. If you don't have him first, seek help. Second is Scoot Henderson, the point guard virtuoso extraordinaire from the G League Ignite. Third is Cam Whitmore, the young star wing in the making from Villanova, who I know you are similarly high on. I'm sure other people have him 3 around, but it's not that many people. So we might be alone on this boat, which is fine with me. And after that, Amen Thompson from the Overtime Elite League. 5th, Walker from Houston. 6th, Miller from Alabama. 7th, the other Thompson twin, Asar. Keontae George. Taylor Hendricks, fan favorite among Knicks people on the internet who pay attention to the draft. And 10th, I actually don't know if it's Kassan or Kason. I'm assuming it's Kassan, but I've actually never fact checked that. Kassan Wallace from Kentucky. So my first question for you is, this is obviously a very talented top 10. How many of these guys would you consider? I'm assuming last year you had a top 3 just like everyone else, some order of Paolo, Jabari, Chet. How many of these 10 would be in the mix for those 3 spots for you?
Oh, it's really good. Yeah, I had I had Chet 1, Paolo 2, Jabari 4.
Oh, who'd you have 3? Ivy?
Jaden Ivey.
Okay, so let's rephrase that question to 4, because Ivy was really cool too.
Yeah, and I actually, for me, it was more of concerns with Jabari, why I put him, like, I just thought Ivy had an easier path to being worth the 3rd overall pick than Jabari did.
Sure.
And like, I've actually started doing my boards like that. I used to just do straight up upside, because I thought that's what the lottery was all about. And now I realize that, like, it's not so simple. So, but yeah, so if we're talking Paolo, obviously Wemby, I would take over all, everyone there. But Scoot, I want to say I would have gone Wemby, Scoot, and then all those guys. Like,
Okay.
I think Scoot to me is not. I know there are people. I know someone that has him 7.
Oh nah, that's very disrespectful.
I know someone that like there are different takes and different reads on Scoot. But to me, he would go number 1 in other drafts. It's the fact that you have a wing who plays like a guard, who is the size of a big man, who is going number 1. That's really the best way I can describe Wemby. Is he's a wing that plays like a guard, but is Zach Edey size. Like, I don't know how the hell to, right? And he is gonna go number 1 because if you have the first bite at the apple, no matter what rotten shit lays beneath the surface, you always bite for what looks like the juiciest, biggest part of the apple. You're trying to get the most juice out of that bite that you can, and you go for Wembanyama. But after that, I think Scoot's a number 1 caliber guy. I'm going to go with him. Then give me.
Now's where it gets fun. Because I agree with you. I would have taken Scoot number 1 over last year's guys. Not that there's some like ridiculous gulf, but it's just like I would have just taken Scoot number 1, and it would have been not a difficult choice for me.
The Osar, Keontae, Taylor, I'd say Kaysen, because that's what Sam Vecini says. Okay. So I trust him with my
he definitely has the correct answer.
With my firstborn. So whatever. So but the Keontae Hendricks Wallace portion of my 10 is, and even like Osar is where I think like, okay, Jabari's there.
Okay.
Probably in between Miller and Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have loved Jarris over Jabari last year. I'm such a sucker for you know this for weeks now.
I feel like he's number 5 on your board, but number 1 in your heart.
In my yeah, I love that guy. So between him, Amen, then Cam, give me Wemby, Scoot, Chet, Paolo, Cam, Amen, Ivy, or actually go Ivy, Amen, Jarris, B. Miller, Jabari, Osar, Key, Taylor, Kaysen.
That's very impressive that you were able to be so decisive about that, because I'd be waffling all over the fucking place. But it's my show, so I don't have to do that.
I am in my head. And I'm already thinking I would have had Jabari over B. Miller. But it's like, to me, it's all rough anyway. So why not just try to be decisive about it? Because
yeah, and you put it into like, I mean, you gave an order, but I think it's also important to do what you did to include groupings. Because that gives you like an alibi of sorts, but I think, there's sometimes you have enough confidence to say this guy is definitively better than the other guy, and I think in most outcomes that's going to be the case. Versus like, I think this guy's better, but it wouldn't surprise me if the other guy's better. They're in the same tier, right? Like that's an important distinction in terms of how confident you are. So I haven't even done this exercise myself. I'm just using it more as an illustration because, like, it's funny. Last year, it was kind of, I don't want to say by the end of the draft cycle, I don't want to say people were underwhelmed, but they were just kind of like whelmed, right? And then Chet got hurt, which was just really unfortunate. And Paolo got off to a light speed start, and like full disclosure, like Paolo's one of those dudes who he already answered some of the questions I had. So like with hindsight, he's already beating my expectations, which is what you love to see. That's awesome. Not that I was like low on him or anything, but he's just like, my main question for him was literally like, when will he learn that he's a juggernaut and can just like nobody can stop him, but he could just draw a zillion fouls? And he was like, oh, I learned that over the summer. I can now draw a zillion fouls as a rookie. He's still working on all the other stuff, but that's for me that was homework assignment number 1, and he got an A+. So that's pretty good. That's what you like to see.
See, I always do the couple word descriptors on my board, which Zach fucking hates, because getting him, like sending him a blob of words, and I get back every time like, dude, like that's like 7 words too many. So I have to cut it to like 3 words max. But Wembanyama, I put all-time big, because whether that's all-time big prospect, whether you project him as an all-time big, I feel like that encapsulates the hype around Wembanyama. I think,
right.
Scoot, all NBA engine. When I say engine, I mean the goddamn V8 underneath the hood of that damn offense. And all NBA to me is like the caliber of prospect he is, as well as like what a lot of people see him becoming. So it's like that for me is what I try to do in those descriptors. My descriptor for Paolo, and I'll never forget it, honestly, in my whole draft life, however long that lasts, is that I put masterful big scorer for him, because I watched that guy and I was just like, I don't know what's more important about him besides the fact that he's masterful. He's fucking like large sized. So like, I think the skill and the size was the sell for me from the beginning, was just like, on him reaching that level. Like if I could bet him minus 190 to make the haul today, I'd do it. Right. Like I think he reaches that level, and it's because he's just like, he's a real hooper, but he's also like 6'9". So that masterful scoring that he has, that I don't know, like you want to say Beasley and like get into trouble, but I don't like it. It's something,
dude. In my end of cycle thing where I was making jokes about all these guys, my high end thing for him was elephant steroids Jason Tatum. So I'm on the same wavelength. And I mean, like he has he has wing skills, but he's a gigantic person. So I mean, like it's as simple as that. And if I was ranking him in this 2023-2022 hierarchy, but with the benefit of hindsight, it would definitely be higher. It would be not in the Wemby tier, but in the Scoot tier.
I was going to say, it's a debate of whether it's Wemby, Paolo, Scoot, or Wemby, Scoot, Paolo. If you have hindsight, and with hindsight, I'm probably going Paolo over Scoot, just because we know.
Yeah, and you tie break with tall people. Like that's what it is in the NBA. Like when in doubt, pick the taller guy. It's usually you're not going to get yourself in trouble if you do that. So yeah, even like, so like Paolo got off to a blazing hot start and pretty much continued hooping throughout the whole season. And even Jabari, who like sucked straight up for most of the year on the weirdo Rockets, which the less we talk about them, the better, unless we're talking about the Knicks, hopefully smacking them. And then like he as he got some more reps at the 5 and some more pick and pops and playing with players who were just better at basketball, even he finally, as a young guy, began finding some consistency here late in the season. So these guys are all good. And the fact that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys at least who are in the mix for that 1, 2, 3 spot last year just really shows you the depth of this class. And, like you can, if you're a draft head, you can find fun and entertainment and like philosophical muscle working in any class. But on some level, like the best players will be the most fun players in a lot of ways. So I definitely think that's one of the defining characteristics of this class. Circling back to the order that you have here, I want to first talk about Cam Whitmore, who I'm pretty sure, though not 100% sure, there's no chance will drop to the Knicks, because if we have 11 and he drops to 11, then either something went horribly wrong or there was a miracle. But guys that I've had as no doubter top 5 guys have dropped past 10 literally multiple times before. So like I shouldn't even phrase it as so unlikely, right? Like I did a Twitter poll right before this out of curiosity like whether Knicks fans would prefer the 11th pick this year or AJ Griffin, or the 11th pick this year or Jalen Williams, right? Two guys who they could have had, who were in their range, who both of us probably had in our top 10, and have done nothing to encourage me to change that in hindsight, because they're both hooping out here. Jalen in particular. And it's one of those things where I'm like, yo, maybe people are like, well, like, he's 18 and sure, he can shoot and jump like a pogo stick and he's built like a Mack truck, but he never passes it and he doesn't know what he's doing on defense. And Villanova was not great, whatever, right? Like, so I don't know, weird shit happens. But Cam, you got him number 3. I know you were noodling a little bit over how to rank him. Amen Thompson, who kind of just, Amen Thompson is almost just self-explanatory at this point. He's like, everybody knows, like, if he gets a jumper, RIP to everybody. If he doesn't get a jumper, still probably really exceptionally good. And then Jairus Walker is now much more well-known after, Houston's run ended a little shorter than they would have liked, but they were hooping, right? Or at least, they went deep into the tournament and they weren't scoring a zillion points except for Marcus Sasser, but Jairus was hooping. So, like, what made you eventually move Cam ahead of those two guys who I know you like?
Yeah. So with Whitmore, I think you have to start with the ludicrously low amount of assists in the high amount of minutes he played. I think that's where like conversations start and end with him, because to me, the athleticism, the gifts, the handle, the shot, like I buy all that shit out the wazoo, right? Like I'm good, right? Like we don't that he's good, man. Like that kid is gonna bump very large men off of him and will send them flying out of bounds without a problem. Like you see what Hart, you see Grimes, Brunson, Randall, like the whole Knicks team is fucking jacked. And it makes defenses tired to have to go up against them. To me, Whitmore, and it's an odd comparison, but like in terms of the role he can fill from day one, it was like a Super Saiyan Grimes to me, not with the shooting in Super Saiyan mode, but rather just I'm in the corner, they have to guard me, I'm going to pump fake, get the guy to bite off his front foot, and then actually drive to the rim in 2.2 seconds.
Except replace 99% of the passes with dunks.
Yeah, it's just like Grimes gets there and dumps it. He dumps it to the big. That's what he does. I've asked Tom Thibodeau about that because there was a game where he
last game he had 2 attempts without passing, though. He's learning.
Right. So earlier in the season, I asked Thibodeau about how defenses were keying in on the fact that a pass was coming every time there. And he blamed it on Grimes. Usually Thibodeau takes the hit for his players. He was like, nah, like he needs to read better at the rim. He's passing every time. I want him shooting. And now he's doing it. And you're seeing like what the non-athletes have to go through at the rim when they're figuring this shit out. And Cam Whitmore is just like gonna get there and then also be above it and have 2 hands on the ball going through it. It's really simple to me what he'll be able to do from the corner, closing out, shooting the open 3 on the wing, hitting the open 3. The step back, like is existent. I'd like to see it get more smooth and comfortable. But he likes, stepping back to that
he takes a lot of tough shots. Yeah. And I don't mean that, like, sometimes I mean that in the bad way, but for him, I actually don't mean that in the bad way. Like I don't think people know he's a power wing, but I think because Villanova didn't make noise and because the Cam hype train kind of just parked itself in the parking lot and just stayed there, he took over 10 threes per 100. And for the non-nerds listening, there's a lot of fucking threes. And basically, like, that's how many threes per 100 possessions AJ Griffin took at Duke. And his whole job is fucking be a floor spacer and be a shooter.
Yep.
Quentin Grimes took like 15 per 100 because he was just on like another fucking plane of existence in Houston. But double digits is a lot for anybody, much less a power wing. And then on top of that, if you go on hoopmath.com, you can look at how many of the threes, what percentage of the threes were assisted versus unassisted. And usually for wing players or ball handlers, anybody who's like a scorer, that'll be like in the, the 70s or the 80s. Like I think Brandon Miller was like 85 or 84. For guys like who are shooting, but mostly not creating, that it'll be like 90 or something like that. His was 55, which means half of his threes were basically him just being like, well, we need a bucket. I'm just going to fucking pull it. This is what I'm doing. So if you consider the fact that like most guys shoot better, he's not going to be doing that in the NBA, just not, at least not in the first like 3 years of his career, just because nobody does that. Like literally nobody. So he's going to have higher quality looks. And I think if he hit 37% of very hard threes with like step backs and all this shit with nobody creating for him, then
yeah, and like it's the college floor,
shoot
smaller.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I buy everything with Whitmore, and that's why to me that conversation about him starts and ends with what you think he's gonna do about that assist rate. I think that, someone who saw Kyle Neptune offense really, really well last year as he was the head coach of Fordham University. And then immediately took a bag to leave after saying he wanted to be here anyway. So
bitter. Oh my gosh, man.
Yeah, well, his understudy, his Kenny Payne, just got a contract extension for 5 years for having a better year in his first year. So I don't like the results speak for themselves, man. Listen, his Kenny Payne.
Real quick, what's his name again? I should know.
Keith Ergo.
Yeah.
Kyle Neptune's the Nova coach. Keith Ergo was he got him from Penn State, and he was his like underling for a while. Ergo did all the recruiting for Fordham's best freshman class in 30 years, while Neptune got all the credit for being the head coach. And then after that, Neptune's crowning accomplishment was going 500 in the A10 and then leaving back for Nova. Ergo stays, gets all the players banned behind Ergo. Ergo stays. Rams have their best season in 30 plus years, and Ergo lands a 5-year contract extension. It's just, not everyone can win in the Bronx. So yeah, you gotta be cut out for it. But listen, I think when you see what's going on up there at Villanova, as Fordham students call it, I think that you see an offense that is searching for itself. Like it's like they're playing games actively looking for an identity. They're like, maybe this game we'll find it. Maybe this game we'll have an identity, guys. Like that team is so wishy-washy. It's why they were in the tournament. And it's like, to me, it's not even all on Neptune. I can have my fun, but until the school starts like accepting that transfers are a thing now, they're going to struggle a lot because Villanova just doesn't do transfers. So if you're looking at Nova and you're like, oh my God, Cam Whitmore can't even win in the college level. How's he? Yeah. Tell his AD to like, that it's allowed to get players from other schools. That's what everyone else did this year, and it worked. Like
literally, like half of college basketball is like in the transfer portal.
Yeah,
so if you ignore that, you might as well be playing like 4-on-5,
3-on-5,
3-on-5.
You have Fordham this year. That one of their most important players on the team, arguably the best player all year, was Khalid Moore, who was like a bench player at Georgia Tech for 4 years, and who they convinced to come home for his 5th COVID year of eligibility and start instead of being a role player. And he came to the A10 instead of, a bigger league. And he was like the best player on the team. The transfer portal is everything for these programs nowadays with NIL. And Villanova's just like, we're so great. We don't need it. We're going to do just fine. And then they lose games and they're like, wow, we can't believe this happened. Who could have seen this coming? So to me, it's like they've got to be more proactive about that, like yesterday. But in the case that they're not, you can't hold it against you can't hold it fully, against everyone that's there, that they didn't do a lot of winning when they're just not, they don't seem to want to organizationally, if you want to say it like that, even though they're not a pro team, but you get what I'm saying. So to
They'd
me,
rather go down on their ship.
yeah. So to
the
me,
ship.
Whitmore, you can't it's not even switch the ship. It's like get a loaner sail because yours ripped. Like, what the hell are we doing here? They're like the boat's like sideways. They've got like 8 people with oars just like pushing rocks so that the boat can stay mildly upright. Like, no, we do not need help. They're waving away the rescue helicopter. They're like, no. It's like, oh my God, you guys are gonna sink in 8 seconds. Please accept help. But anyway, so like all of that stuff with Cam Whitmore, like, yes, maybe he didn't have the best teammates to pass to. It's such a low amount of assists that you really have to you can't just wishy-wash that away. I do think that with NBA spacing, with the knowledge that he's a rookie and not the best player that team has had in years, Jay Wright's last recruit, I think that he will be, I think he's going to learn from day one in the NBA that's how he's going to have good teammates. He wants his teammates to find him. He's going to find them, like he is going to learn quick that the not passing thing just doesn't work, and he will adapt to it. He has an NBA build. He has an NBA skill set of someone who can be like a 4th best player in a lineup right now. And then he'll also get better. So to me, I think you just wait on that to come along and you work with him on reads and all that stuff. But I'll go down trying to teach a super athlete how to play basketball before I go down trying to teach a good basketball player how to be good in the NBA. I can't, like, Johnny Davis was great. And then I realized that maybe it wasn't a good thing that he was making all these tough shots. Like, yeah, he could make them, but why did he need to take them? And with Whitmore, it's like none of those questions exist because he's a Lamborghini of a built human. Like, I just don't want to talk about Camborghini. This is the Camborghini. Okay. Like, this is the, like if Reddish was like 4 inches wider and the same height, I just don't
and could jump higher than over a shoebox.
Yeah. I just this is the Camborghini. This is that guy. This is, I think Reddish still is trying to find in year 4 or 5, like what makes him good. He knows what he's good at, but what makes him good in the NBA? Cam Whitmore can walk in day one and know what makes him good. I don't mean to rag on Reddish or anyone. I just, they have the same first name and nickname. So I rolled with that. It's not that deep. It's not about the Knicks, but, yeah, I just think that Whitmore is a stud and will develop like one and will play like one and will be one.
What about because when you're talking about where he is in this class, Amen is also a Lamborghini, right? Like, he's not as jacked, but he's somehow even more explosive than Cam. And Jarvis Walker, obviously, he's not anywhere near the athlete that those guys are. But in terms of the know when to pass and know how to make reads end of the spectrum, if Cam is on one end and Amen is closer to the middle, then Jairus is probably the other end of the spectrum. So that's one that I also struggled with, and I have my reasons for having Cam over Amen pretty much just come down to the shooting. Honestly, I think Amen has it all and will be amazing even if he's an inconsistent shooter. But I just think people if you read the conversations on Twitter, you think, like we alluded to before, that the debate with Cam is is the shot real or not? To me, that it's not. Is the shot real or not? It's is the shot great or is it very good? That's where I am personally. When with the men, he's just he needs to tweak some things to me, and it just might take a while. And one thing that I've kind of learned and been burned on a little bit is if your prospect is a little older, that's that much less time to tweak shooting. before it's like winning time and nobody has time for your shit on your first contract, right? Like if you're not doing the thing you're supposed to be doing and your team isn't tanking, like that's minutes that come away. Or maybe you're so good at everything else that you play, but you can't shoot and your team doesn't win as much because of it. So it's just, that was the tie break for me. And then Walker, for me, he's the beginning of like the next group. I don't have him in that same group, but
Yeah,
I would not be surprised if Walker just made me look stupid about that.
Well, no, I agree. I'm with you there in that he's not in the same group as Whitmore, Ahmed, right? Like, okay. So the way I look at this is, and maybe you'll understand my board. Like, I better when you hear this. Like, I always think about access to game breaking tools. Access to game breaking tools. I think that's a great fucking lens to add on when you're looking at the top. Like if looking at any prospect is a microscope, like you have different standards for different ranges of guys, right? And like when you're looking at the top, you've got all the lenses on. They need to be, do they have an elite skill, or do they care on defense? You know, all that shit like needs to be a yes kind of. And they always look worse under the lens of like, you know, slide on the lens of how much access do they have to game breaking skills. And for me, Amen has a shit ton of access, but the cloudiest path given his shot. Whitmore has a shit ton of access and a slightly clearer path. And it's you know, Amen's the craziest athlete, right? But like Whitmore is still nuts and has the shot and has, you know, and then Scoot is like, holy googly moogly, like this guy is insane. And he has access to all, and then Wemby like is the game breaking tool. So that's not even a question. But you know, like for me, I think Jarris is where that ends. Like Jarris is where you get from has access to game breaking tools and a lot of it and a lot of them. Jarris is the first one where I'm like, he might have access to game breaking tools. There might be an explosive athleticism. There might be a punch that's there from IMG days, and he got hurt and he was recovering this year and what it like, you know, maybe, but he's also, you're happy with what he is if he doesn't have that explode, you know, like I think that his instincts are unteachable. Jarris's defensive instincts. And like, that's a reason why, how much shit can you do that I can't teach anybody is a big thing on how you get to the top of my board. And that's why Cam and Amen are both in the top 4. You know, that's why Wemby is number 1, Scoot number 2. Like these guys that can do shit also are number 7. Hendricks number 9 because of his size and potential. Like I just and you know, the instincts aren't as there as Jarris is, but you still, if you're drafting him that high, you think you can develop them, right? So like those are the kind of like questions I ask myself. Like, can this guy break the game of basketball when he's on the court? How easy will that be for him to do? What does he need to do to get there? You know, the usual questions, but through the lens of game breaking tools, I think you develop a higher standard, which is good because I like seeing how guys stack up to higher standards. Ultimately, that's how your cream of the crop rises, right? But you also have to remember that these guys are also like a year younger than me or my age. And I do a lot of dumb, stupid shit online. So they do too. You know, it's like they are also going to not be perfect. They are not going to be perfect basketball players right now, but looking at them through that lens of like, I need more from you. That's how I separate my top guys. And to me, Jarris is where you get that first break of like, okay, there's a half step down here in terms of what we're looking at.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And looking at your board, I kind of see that because Brandon and Asar and Keontae and Tay, they all kind of fall into that category. I want to talk about the last 3 guys real quick on your board, on your top 10, Keontae George, Taylor Hendricks, and Kassan Wallace, because those are guys who I think opinions vary quite a bit, and I think that's the part of the draft where you do get to see more opinions vary. I think most top tens have Jarris, Brandon, Asar, Amen, and Cam in some configuration, and then after that it gets real wild, real fast. And some people are like, I don't trust Keontae because this dude had the worst shot selection ever, and he ended the season poorly, and some people don't like Tay Hendricks as much because he shoots and he plays defense, but he doesn't really do much else with the ball, which is definitely something that role players and stars both need to do in the modern NBA. And then Kassan Wallace, some people love Kassan, but he's also a guard who's under 6'5" and didn't appear to be a lead scoring guard, which if you're under 6'5" and not a lead scoring guard, that's a quick way to get out of most people's top tens. Most people. Some people think there's a little more under the hood, as is the tradition with Kentucky guards. He's a hell of a shooter and pretty good handler too. So they're very well might be. But I guess my first question about those three for you, say the Knicks get the 11th pick and one of those guys drops to the Knicks. I think Taylor Hendricks, we can talk about him first because I think he's the one who is both top 10 level talent and also something that the Knicks clearly don't have and could use, which is a tall, for people who don't know Taylor Hendricks, he's a power forward sized dude who's like 6'9". He's a freshman. He's really bouncy. He has long arms. I don't know how long. He blocks a lot of shots. He played a lot of center and a lot of power forward. He defended the rim really well, but he also defended everywhere else really well, particularly like switching on to smaller players or faster players. He defended stronger players like Jarris Walker really well. So he's just, and then he's a pretty really good shooter. He wasn't like out here doing tween step backs or running off screens like Grady Dick, but he took a lot of threes and they weren't all easy threes. He took a lot of threes that I think defy categorization. Like if you looked on a stat sheet, it would be like catch and shoot 3, but actually he was receiving the ball facing the other way, and then he caught it, turned around, and shot it without dribbling, which is like not running off the screen, not off the dribble, just a catch and shoot. But in reality, like it was a tough shot. And he's tall. He's 6'9", and sometimes he looks taller than 6'9" to me. So, are you with the? Where are you on the like? Where does he rank on the guy who drops to 11 scale for you? Like, are we talking like all caps on Twitter if that happened for the Knicks?
If Hendricks is there at 11, and they're picking there at 11 or whatever it is, like that's, to me, regardless of what the fit is in your head at that moment, like you're moving Toppin. Right? Like just take him, figure it out. If you cannot tell Tom Thibodeau to play him from day one, if Tibbs works with him and says, good God, this kid needs to learn a lot and come along a long way, go sign Trey Lyles. Let him be your backup. And when you think Taylor's ready midway through the season or next year, make that switch when it needs to be switched. But you draft that guy, and the big thing is the Knicks have gone for the big wing. They traded for Reddish, tried to, retool him into this
role player-y kind of dude. Yeah.
Role player Cam trademark logo that Cam hates. Cam hates that guy. And so Cam likes star Cam, not role player Cam. And that's understandable, because if you think you're a star, then you should probably, be treating yourself like one and keeping yourself to the standard of one. That's all fine and dandy. But when none of the coaches you play for agree with you, you need to learn how to switch that up. And it's like, to me, there's no switching it up for Hendricks. His natural style of play, his natural defensive role as a 4 out there, like this is all going to be conducive to him doing what you want him to do. I don't think there's a transition of like, hey, you're not a star. go do the dirty work. I think Hendricks likes that stuff. I think he relishes the opportunity to go do that for his first NBA team. Go be a dirty worker down low. Like this stuff, he played the 5 in college. He'll play the 4 in the league. Like he'll do the dirty work. He knows what that takes. He knows, like he's that big wing the Knicks have been missing that I wanted them really I've wanted them for a while now to go find, because I do think that can be done through the draft and not with 3 first-round picks for OG Anunoby. The fact that you and I liked Tari Eason as much as we did, these guys are good. These guys that can come in the league and F things up with their length and their instincts. And like, these guys are good, right? And you could argue that there are two kinds of players in the league today that are most important to have alongside stars. A weak side rim protecting 4 that can space the floor, and a point of attack defending 1 that can hit from above the break, right? Like whether it's a Garland or a Drew, whatever it is, like someone who, on offense who can space the floor out above the break for your jumbo, whoever it is. Garland doesn't bring the point of attack defense. That's why you need a 2 who can. That's why you're going to need, they're going to need Mitchell to do a lot for Garland in whatever playoff series they're in. You need these things in next to stars, right? And like Drew Holiday is an example of one. Even if they're not amazing at the point of attack, like, you want to look at guards like Steph as the exception, Kyle Lowry as more the regular. And he had that point of attack defense, there's just different things to me that you kind of need. And I think that Hendricks is that weak side rim protecting 4 who can really change shit up in a game just by being down low, by jockeying for position, spacing the floor on offense, also taking a guy off the dribble if he needs to. I also, Hendricks is a little bit more of a project than I think Knicks Twitter thinks right now. I think it was Stone Hansen that had some notes about this. You guys know, report court. But Hendricks is gonna be someone who I think is worth that project investment. And yeah, I would definitely draft Tari Eason before him. I think Tari's mix of natural instincts with size and skill makes him amazing. But I have Hendricks in my top 10 for kind of the same reason I had Tari in my top 10 that year, which is like, this guy is really large and good at basketball now, and he's athletic enough to figure shit out at the next level. Like, this will work out and be a worthwhile bet for any team that could use size at the wing, which is 30 out of 30. So yeah, like, I loved Tari. I love Taylor. I just think I like Tari more as a prospect, but I do think Taylor's upside just says, like, treat me the same because I'm the same kind of bet. Even if they're not the exact same in every area, I think, and Tari averages out a little higher, whatever. It's very similar to me, like the sell on why you're going after one versus the other.
Yeah, totally agree. He's moved up pretty steadily all year. His analytics profile is like off the charts, which is very similar to Tari. So if you have a big dude who can shoot the hell out of the ball, is a 2-way player with great analytics, that's a pretty, I don't want to say risk-free, because very few players are risk-free. Nobody is risk-free, actually. And, but for where you're picking, like, that's a high floor, high ceiling, similar to Tari, except he's a lot younger than Tari was, which makes it a crazy, like, appealing pick. That just means he has that much more time to improve things and learn the game. Like you mentioned, he's a little bit more of a project than people think. I think I agree with that. And then you kind of, in your description of the golden goose eggs what winning teams have. You also mentioned the archetype that kind of fits for Cason Wallace, right? The point of attack defending one.
I wonder why that came up.
This is not your first rodeo here. So it's like you host a podcast or something. But so like talk about him and Keontae. I mean, Cason seems to very squarely fit. Like everybody who, if you haven't watched Cason Wallace, the defense is the thing that leaps off of the screen. I don't even know where his steal rate ended up, but it was like over 5 early in the year. And
he tied the single game record at Kentucky for steals in a game, which was from like decades ago. So that's the kind of player he is.
Yeah, and he's not just a dude who sells out for steals either. He's opportunistic and he's pretty smart about it. I mean,
Fordham, I don't know. No one on here, literally nobody watches Fordham's women's basketball, which is a shame on you because what a fun team. But they had a guard this season named Asia Dingle. Now, she came from Stony Brook and was at, I want to say Kent State before that, or Kent, maybe just Kent. But she went to Stony Brook, and then for her senior year, and then this year was her grad year, came to Fordham University. And Asia Dingle, Suze, she goes by, has a co-defensive player of the year under her belt from this season. And I could tell you right now, the reason for that is because you can't do anything near her without acknowledging she's there. And that sounds weird, so I'll repeat it. You can't do anything near her without acknowledging she's there. Let's go into specifics. You're the 3. You drive from the left wing inside to the elbow. You dribble. You're going to one dribble, punch step, bring your feet together, pop up for the mid-range jumper. Except on your way up, the ball's already gone and halfway down the court because she came from behind, snuck it out. Not a steal, not a poke. She literally like sham gods it out of your hand and then runs back with it. And it's like, to me, I just see Kaysen in her in the sense that she's the team's leading scorer, but you know, she does the rim pressure thing, but she goes out there, she spaces the floor, but she's not a shooter. She just spaces it. You know, she'll go 3 for 11 from 3 in a game, or she'll go 3 for 5, right? Like it's different. It's varying results, but Asia's always out there setting the tone on both ends of the court. She's leading on the court. She's talking to her teammates. And she's out there, like, you can't do anything near her because she will steal the ball. Whether she's guarding you or not, you can't go near her on the court. It's like Revis Island where they just don't even throw to that guy. Like, you can't dribble near her. And I loved watching her play basketball because to do that shit, you have to really love what you're doing. You don't just I forgot to mention, she's the point guard. She's like 5'5". She's like 5'5". Smallest player on every court, leading scorer in the A10, 19 points a game. So, like, to me, she's just a fucking dog. And that's what I see in Kaysen, is that desire to know, despite size disadvantage, despite not having the burst, the talent, whatever it is of everyone else out there, he'll leave the court that day the best player of the day because he brought it on both ends. He brought it on defense when no one else was. He was getting turnovers left and right. He ended up getting 5 steals that game, and you only noticed 2 of them. He's that kind of guy where, like, he's everywhere. He's everything, everywhere, all at once, you know, is all over the place. Rock with googly eyes. He's just great. He's great.
Yeah, man. He's, I guess, where I have to maybe go back and watch some tape is like the degree of. He's tough for me. Combo guards are my weakness. I just all consistently fucks him up for a variety of reasons. And what makes him appealing to me as a prospect is there's a lot of sign. He was never like viewed as a big scoring guard prospect like Keontae, for example, who was very inefficient, but like he wasn't afraid to put him up, and he was clearly like one of the main scoring options on Baylor. But Cason Wallace shoots well from everywhere, and it's not just shots that are created by other people. Like, he can get into pretty much his pull-up whatever, right? Because in college, especially, if a big gets you a screen, you're probably going to get free a little bit. And if he's the kind of dude who just he makes the right reads and he sees the game. So like he's happy to pass it off to somebody if he goes around the screen and somebody else helps. But if they leave him, if the center drops, for example, then he'll just take a pull up. I think he was over 50% on pull up mid range shots, which is crazy high. Even though he's a slender guard and he's 6'4", 6'3", he finishes really well. He can use both hands and his arms are really long. So even though he's below the rim, his arms be like at the rim. And so I definitely think he has some sneak scoring ability and he can shoot shit out of the ball. So if you really think he's a game breaking type of defender, particularly both not just on ball, but also off ball, because a lot of guys are really good at one, but not really good at the other. Mikal Bridges and Devin Vassell were two of my favorite prospects of the last couple of years, but Mikal was mostly a problem on ball, and off ball he was like fine. And Vassell was really great off ball, but on ball he was fine. And Tyrese Halliburton, I'm just picking random guards here, but like Tyrese Halliburton was a very good defensive prospect wholly because of his off ball skills, and that has continued in the NBA, but his on ball defense is terrible, right? So like it is really important to be we don't really talk about what a balanced defender looks like. That's not something people talk about, right? It's either like, oh, you're good at defense or you're bad at defense, when in reality, you can be good at some kinds of defense and terrible at other kinds of defense. And when you're a guard or a wing, that actually matters a lot, right? Like you can be a great point of attack. Cam Reddish is actually a great example. He's a pretty good point of attack defender, but he's terrible at defending the pick and roll, and he's terrible off ball. And you're going to spend a lot more time off ball and defending pick and rolls than you are going to be on ball for the most part, which is why he's never actually been that impactful a defender, despite his really good, like one-on-one, king of the court situation type defense. So that might be, maybe that's maybe I got to fucking move this guy up. I don't know. That might be it, combined with the Kentucky bump that is lurking. He's going to get some juice once he gets to the league. I don't know if I'll bump him to top 10, but to bring it back to the Knicks, I guess.
I was gonna say, when you say bump, what do you mean? Because I feel like you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You got him at 12. You've got him at 12. So it's not. You're not like super far off from me.
So in my board, the left to right order, I should have clarified this. The left to right order doesn't matter. The up and down matters. That's what I meant by my order. So like
so he's 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. He's anywhere from 12 to 17 for you then.
Yeah, and that's and that's pretty much I did move him up, right? Because I had him in the row before that.
Now he's with Nick. He's with Nick, Derek, Dick, Jet, Max.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up just now, so I can be professional here. And
I got your board out.
Yeah, you know my board better than I know my board. No, but he's because of the combo of just shooting and not just well-rounded, but like exceptional and exceptional defense in different ways. That's like a pretty easy player. And then, when you think of how many teams have amazing lead stars who are not the smallest player on the court, he slots in so easily next to all of those guys that like it's the same reason I ended up really high on Deuce in that year. Except Kasan is more polished and has probably he is a better shooter, and that's not because I think Deuce is a bad shooter. I thought he was a good shooting prospect, but Kasan is like a very good shooting prospect. So I think he's just the rare combo guard who's kind of boring to me, which is why I'm just like kind of like meh when I'm talking about him. But in reality, he's just like clinically great. But here's a question for you, and it dovetails not into the Knicks situation, but also just into draft philosophy in general. Take him and Keontae, two guys who are in your top 10. If the Knicks can get a top 10 talent outside of the top 10, there's a pretty good argument, almost like you said with Taylor Hendricks, where it's just like, just fucking get it. Like, even if you can't figure out how to iron out the playing time or the fit on year one with Tibbs, or they need to brush up their fundamentals or whatever before they earned his trust. Like, that shit could all be true. And maybe they're impactful in the second year. But in my head, there's definitely always a question of like, how far can you push that, right? Before you actually start to impact their development. Like, I don't think every player is destined to be who they end up, if that makes sense. And I'm a firm believer that you need real minutes to develop, or else you're in trouble. And even G League minutes is not necessarily the same as NBA minutes. So like, if a team like the Knicks were to have these guys, there's definitely a fine line of pick them. They're the best talent, but you got all these dudes on the team, and maybe you, consolidate, and that frees up the time, and the front office solves this problem for you. But where are you in terms of that as a concern? Not necessarily with the Knicks, but just in general, like guys needing to play and teams being really good, so playing time can be kind of hard to find.
Yeah, I think this stuff all comes and goes in waves to me. Like, soon there will be 4 teams that are actively just playing development lineups, right? Like, I think right now we're at 1 in Houston. Like, I think we're at 1 team where everyone is like, okay. Or Detroit counts too, right?
Because I would say Houston and Detroit, and then
Detroit's doing the Wiseman Duran shit. I
guess the Spurs maybe. Like, now that they don't have Pirtle.
Oh my God, yeah, I guess, right?
Who's the vet?
Jesus Christ! Yeah, all right,
but even so with those 3 teams, like, I think that's actually a low number. Like, I think
that's what I'm saying.
Years,
so we'll get back to 7, 6, whatever the fuck.
Okay.
We'll get back. Like, I think this comes and goes in waves. I think, you just see teams value G League minutes. Like, the Knicks straight up drafted a guy and sent him to the G League for a full year. Like he was a a bond, right? Like they were like, all right, we're gonna spend all this
study
money.
Abroad or White Plains.
Yeah, go study abroad for a year and come back a better student. Like, that was fascinating to me that they leaned into that, because I've been saying for years that teams should lean into the G League. That's why I think the Knicks could be the first team really of this era of the G League to draft a guy in the lottery and straight up be like, he's not playing a minute because we're too good. Like, say it and send him to Westchester. Because it would make sense for them. And it's something that more teams should do. I think just because we've unrestricted draft age to a point where you can get your hands on the guys earlier, and the fact that more reps equals more experience, I think people are like, oh, well, if you combine those 2 things, you'll develop everybody and we'll all smile and hold hands, right? And it's like, guys need specific reps. Guys need certain kinds of reps. Guys need reps at certain speeds. Guys, like, there's so much more than just throw them the fuck out there. For all the people that just wanted young players to play for the Knicks, like, there's a difference between quickly playing 19 minutes a game when he should be playing 25 and wanting quickly to get 33 minutes. Like, Kevin Knox was running around doing whatever the fuck he wanted for a whole year. He got a rookie of the month out of it. Whoop the fuck, right? Like, you need to have specific development, purposeful, intentional development. And I think that that'll never be lost. And so as you see teams right now, not really fitting in the young guys as much, or like not feeling the pressure to, I think it's because they're just trusting the cream of the crop to rise to the top in behind the scenes in their own developmental systems. And that's what I think the ripple effect will be, is teams investing more in their developmental teams. And then as a result of that, we'll get back to, that's kind of like the cycle, right? Like, as teams invest more in development teams, then they'll be playing their young guys more. Then they play their young guys more, and they realize that product looks like shit. So they play more vets. Then they play too many vets. So then they invest in their development team more. Like, that's kind of the whole cycle. And I think we're just where we're at right now is the play too many vets.
It's interesting because I feel like, for the Knicks, it's one of those situations where we've been screaming for them to play young players more, And now they are. They're still pretty young, even though they're really competitive. And around the league, teams have been playing. You're seeing some teams, I guess teams are, it depends on the team almost, on like where you are in that cycle. And it's both a gift and a curse in a little bit, right? Like you look, I'm just picking a couple of good teams at random, like Memphis and the Kings. Memphis has constantly given over the last 2-3 years minutes to young players and rookies, and not just like old rookies like Des Bane, but like, and not just top 5 picks like Jaren Jackson, but like Zaire Williams was a starter at age 20 on a very good team, warts and all. And then you got Keegan, who's a bit of an older rookie, of course, but he's playing big minutes for a top seed. And
Can I fire off my Keegan take on here that I tweeted? I said if the cockamamie,
oh boy,
wishy-washy and disingenuous logic that was employed when we selected the Rookie of the Year last year was employed this year, Keegan Murray's your Rookie of the Year. Not Jalen Williams, not Paolo, not these guys that the writers are trying to sell you on as dark horses. Keegan Murray
who is Rookie of the Year this year? I don't even fucking who.
Scotty Barnes.
That was such a weird fucking
because he finished the last 20 games of the season as the best rookie of the 3 by the raw counting stats. So they were like, holy shit, stop the presses. That award's not going to either 2 of the best rookies. And like, to me, Paolo and J-Dub have been the 2 best rookies, right? But the logic that was used last year was, even if you're the 3rd best rookie, if you're on the best team contributing the most to the best team, then you're the Rookie of the Year. And that's Keegan Murray with no doubt. But since that's not how the award works, I have him in number 3 with Jalen Williams, number 2 with you know who, and number 1, Mr. Banchero, who we spoke about a bit earlier. And for me last year, it was Cade, Mobley, Scotty. But they gave the award to Scotty, and I think they're doing the same thing this year where they're like, everyone's writing about Jalen Williams and Keegan Murray in a last-ditch effort to like make this an interesting race so there's more to write about. It's just not a race. The race is over. The race was won. Now guys are competing for second, like go fight for silver type shit.
And it's about late counting stats and shit, because even in those arguments, like you're hearing J-Dub when he's been getting minutes and all that, but you don't hear like, Walker Kessler just scored like 30 the other day, but most games his stat line is like 4, 8, and 2, and he played really fucking good, but because the counting stats are shit, these fucking voters don't give a shit because they don't know hoop. So I agree. It's very weird. This is why I choose not to invest in that. I literally like memory hold that shit. I was like, who, what, Scotty, what? And then it all came fucking flushing back to me. Like, oh yeah, that happened for real. But yeah, so
that did happen.
Back to the guards, Kassan and Keontae. Like, I really like what you were saying about the cycle of teams, or the whole league really, kind of figuring out ways to develop. And I never thought of it until now, but there's some parallels to kind of what happened over the last 7 years in baseball. There was a point where there were teams that were clearly ahead in terms of developmental resources, and that's more or less evened out now. And you see the same cycle in baseball all the time. Like Moneyball, Moneyball and all that shit happened. And there was like an advantage for a couple of teams. And then like the entire league became like, okay, we get it. Guys who can hit a home run, walk or strike out can still be valuable, even if they don't hit for average, blah, blah, blah. And then the league just moved forward with that, and analytics developed further, and the technology improved. And that did not become the standard bearer for what made a good analytical foundation for a baseball team. And some teams didn't move on from that. So those teams were stuck for a while. And then the Yankees were one of those teams who were stuck for a while. And then they caught up and did what they do, which is sink millions of dollars into their developmental and analytical teams and shore it up. And that paid dividends greatly. And now we're at the point where most teams are pretty much where the Yankees are, albeit with less money, in terms of the technology that they have and the tracking and the data that's available. And with the NBA, I think you're right. I think there's some unexplored usage of G League teams that is on the table for a lot of these guys. And there's also definitely some unexplored analytical advantages, because we know straight up some teams still don't, like, every team might have a couple of analytical dudes on the payroll, but they don't all give a shit just because they got them on the payroll. And like, you could see that shit on the court. You don't need to be a nerd about it to realize who is and isn't ahead of the curve in that respect. And next year, all the arenas are getting like the Hawkeye systems installed for like super duper crazy tracking data. So it's that gap has the potential to actually widen. And this is all going to contribute to, like, there's a lot of good players, and some teams may not realize that they can utilize these young players who are good to win now, right? Like what happened to Tibbs for a while. And then Tibbs, probably with the help of our analytics team, finally turned over a new leaf. And look
probably is doing a lot there.
I can neither confirm nor deny, but
that probably is like the P in pterodactyl. Like, it is the most useless fucking.
Everything about the Knicks screams nerds have a say.
Well, I'll tell you right now, the Knicks, I've been told, out of baseball, football, basketball, and hockey. I'm not talking about the NBA. I'm not talking about out of the NBA and the G League.
You're talking about sports.
I'm talking about fucking sports. Are the most by the dollar analytically invested team out of any of them. This is what I've been told. So
that makes sense if you think about it, because like,
well, Leon came in from day one and told Dolan that they need to take the uncapped areas of the NBA and literally just flush them with money. Like, like saline spray.
That's what the Yankees did. That's what the Yankees did. Yep.
Saline, where you just get up in your shit and just flush, like you're just shooting water up your nose. They got in there with money, with $100 bills, and they were just like everywhere. Because coaching, assistant coaching, associate head coaching, development,
the scouting.
Staff,
this Knicks scouts are everywhere, dude.
Ball boys, like the Knicks don't have like ball boys. Like, they don't have like local. You know what I mean? Like, they have like guys, like trainers. Like you can no longer like come off the street and be a ball boy for the team anymore. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone on the court with them is like a decade plus of coaching experience. Like, it's like, yeah, everyone they have doing their job is really good at it. I want to say Scott King, the video analyst, may not have 10 plus years experience, and that's the only guy I can think of. And he might.
It's abundantly clear. And guys like Key and Kassan and Tay Hendricks, like, I mean, I actually have a piece coming out. I don't know when it's going to drop, but it goes through like all of the Knicks draft picks that we've had under this front office, and all of the guys who we've had reported interest in, and tries to kind of suss out what are the commonalities. And one of them is like all these dudes, draft picks or not, are pretty much great analytically. I actually think, depending on what measure of great, depending on how you define great analytically, the results may change. But like, to pick one metric, box plus minus, I think the lowest two players of all the guys who we've had reported interest in over the Leon Rose era, that in terms of box plus minus, are Jalen Williams, ironically enough, and Tyrese Maxey, whose BPMs were like around 4 on Basketball Reference. So if you use another site, it might be a little different. And both of those guys had other advanced stats that were really good. Like Jalen Williams, his statistical profile, aside from box plus minus, was pretty much flawless. It was like 60 plus true shooting and 40% from 3 and great assist turnover, rebounds, and whatever.
Yep.
And Maxey is kind of his own category, because that was just a weird ass Kentucky team. But it's definitely something they care a lot about. And if one of these guards, Kassan or Keontae checks a lot of these boxes for them, then, I could very well see them saying, we got a lot of guards, but we're going to consolidate for a star eventually. And if this guy is left to pick up the minutes, then that would be fucking fantastic, right? Like, they probably plan to do a star deal of some sort in the next 2 years, give or take. And either these guys can be a part of that deal or they can increase their role once the deal is complete. So even though it can be a little unfun to be like, is he going to take minutes from Deuce or IQ and Jalen? And like, those are all valid concerns, but much more valid for the first year than beyond that. So I'm not telling Knicks fans to worry if we pick a guard, but I see a lot of people on the internet who are like, if they draft somebody who's under 6'5", I'm gonna slap myself in the face or whatever. And it's just like, it's not ideal, but if it's the best player, you should probably still do it. Cause like, what are we like to just pick random examples? Like, you're gonna pass on Mathurin or Halliburton or whoever because they're not a wing? Like, that doesn't make sense, right? Like, if a guy's good, you'll probably in retrospect be like, damn, I wish we took that really good 6'4" player instead of ruling them out. So that's kind of how I see it with Keontae and Hassan Wallace. Like, they're way different types of guards, but they can both do a lot of those things that you like to see from your one spot, whether it's the defense or, being physical. Key is not the defender Hassan is, but he's a physical dude in the same way. He's like a burlier guard, and he's not afraid to bump dudes on both ends and all that shit. So so I could totally see it. I want to move to a different topic outside of the top 10 because I don't want to keep you here forever as much as I would love to. And that is some of the other players not in the top 10 who I know you're interested in and who other folks are interested in. And I want to start with two wings. And then after that, I want to talk about two shooters. So the two wings are Max Lewis from Pepperdine and Jet Howard from Michigan. These guys are players who I am high on. You mentioned it before, but they're like right outside the category of really fucking good prospects for me. I go back and forth on these fucking guys too. And the reason is, even though they have the physical profiles that I like, which is 6'8", 6'9", skilled with the ball, right? Both can handle, both can shoot. Although I would say Jet's probably a little crispier handle and a little crispier of a shooter, but Max is way more athletic and I think a little bigger. So they both have really good, if not game-breaking skills, just very impactful top selling point skills, like your elevator pitch skills. But I just go back and forth on what I think of their flags. Kind of like, we talked about it with Whitmore, where with him, it's one clear thing. It's the passing and the offensive field. There's just one flag. And once you figure out how you feel about that, then you figured out how you feel about Cam Whitmore for the most part. But with these guys, a couple of things. So where are you at on those two dudes? Like, what, to me, if we're picking and those top 10 guys you mentioned aren't available and these guys, like, we'd be lucky to have either of these guys. But even if we do pick them, like, what's the voice in the back of your head worried about? Or is that just like me and my anxiety?
The defense,
okay.
The defense. If I were the Knicks and Max and Jet, who are currently 14 and 15 respectively on my board, were on the board, I would go with Max. And it's not because I've got him a hair above Jet regardless. It's because I think he's the higher upside player. I believe more in his defense. I believe more in his like offensive creation. I think Jet is like, his handle's awesome for his size at 6'7", and then like everything else concerns you. It's like he can shoot the shit out of the rock. His handle's awesome for his size at 6'7", and then everything else is like, whoa, are we sure he's good at this? That's okay. He's like fucking 19. You know what I mean? Right. Also, I was not a Cole Anthony guy, and he never left my top 20 ever. Because if you have a dad who is an NBA player, especially a cup of coffee kind of NBA player over a star. Look at
the grind.
Look at Booker. Look at Nance. Look at Thompson.
Devin Booker's dad. Oh shit, you're right.
Yeah. Look at the guys with dads who got cups of coffee in the NBA, and they're all fucking good.
It's like MLB coaches who are all stars, who are all catchers.
All of them are good. The coach's son, I buy it. But it doesn't mean everything, right? But the son of a cup of coffee NBA dad, for some reason, is like this unstoppable formula.
I'm gonna fuck around when I'm bored in this draft cycle and do the analysis on this statistically, because this is good stuff right here.
Montes, right?
Yeah.
But his dad wasn't a cup of coffee. His dad was really good, but like,
But when he came over, it was like the end of his career and all that.
Winston Garland played in the NBA. Tito Horford played in the NBA.
Kobe.
Yeah, Mr. Bryant. There was I'm trying to think, Jabari Smith Sr.
This is so funny.
Like this shit is real, yo. This shit, I'm telling you.
You could even expand that shit these days to the WNBA with like Jaden Ivey, right?
Yeah, and wait on DeJuan's son or Milt's grandson to come through.
Yeah, next year.
Right? So it's like, yo, this shit is real to me. And I think that Adrian Griffin. But I think that Del Curry, sorry, don't know how I forgot him. Greg Anthony, Manute Bol, Ron Brewer, son Ronnie Brewer, Rick Brunson, Jalen Brunson. How the fuck did I forget him? So it's like, if your dad was a mediocre NBA player, you're gonna be a stud. I
think Isaiah Hartenstein's dad also, right? Didn't Florian? I know he played in Europe, but I'm pretty sure he had like a cup of coffee.
Florian Hartenstein, former professional basketball player, but no NBA.
Not NBA. Damn, my bad, Florian.
You no Oregon. Yeah, then Germany. But like, yeah, man. So I really think that shit is real. And so with Jet, like, I buy the hell out of him sticking. That's the formula to me. Cup of coffee, NBA dad, or better equals you're sticking. But it doesn't guarantee anything. With Max, I see the upside. Like, I see him being, I don't know, like, let me just be irreverent and stupid here so that we can rein it in. Like, Trey Murphy with the handle, baby Brandon Ingram, like whatever it is, that upside exists for me, where Jet, I think, is so hamstrung by the non-existent defense. It's like, how much impact can this guy have? Now, I would want to buy Jet's defense because of his background, but to me, it's like, if he can't try in college, like, will he when he gets to I don't know. So I hate betting against guys to try on defense in the NBA, but like, you have to kind of guess where you're going to get effort from and not. And like, it's not a question mark with Case and Wallace, So like, that's why he's over guys like Nick Smith and Ant Black to me. I would take Kaysen before either of those two. I had the opportunity to speak with the coach who game planned for and played against Ant Black this year. He was like, yeah, he's really cool. What's awesome is that you just don't have to guard him outside the 3-point line at all, ever. And that's what we did. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's like, yeah, like no matter what, Ant Black went 1 for 6 from 3 in the game against that coach, by the way. So, yeah. And it's like, to me, with Kaysen, you're getting a guy who wants it on both ends and who will do what it takes to get it on both ends. I think doing that on defense says a lot about what you can figure out on offense, your work ethic, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not out on Max's defense. I'm a believer.
They were a weird team. They played like a bunch of zone defense because they were just, I fucking hate evaluating zone prospects because it's like, I don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg. I'm like, the rest of the whole team, the team as a whole is probably butt on defense if they're playing zone. And is this player, in this case Max, like kind of like lackadaisical because it's zone and generally young players don't know how to play zone? Or is it because this is his attitude towards defense? Because people forget zone is just like any other defense, but most guys are playing man-to-man their whole life or not playing any real fucking defense in high school. and then you got to execute zone principles versus like teams with upper classmen and shit who know how to exploit that, then like RIP, dude. Like this is why the zone is supposed to be a curveball and not the fastball unless you're fucking old time Syracuse or whatever. So I don't know what the fuck to do. Like Max, like he has instances where he gets at it on defense, and I'm like, this is fucking great. And then he has times where he's just in the zone, kind of just floating, and I'm like, all right, this sucks because I wish he would do the other thing where he's good instead of just doing this thing where he's just standing around.
Yeah, I think Max has the potential to go get after it on that end. I see Jet being fine on that end. I don't see him being terrible or awful or unplayable. But do I see him being someone who goes and gets after it? Like for me, this lottery shit is all about what you might be able to get. Like what you might I know there are people who see it the other way around. What role can you play day one? How well can you play it? Okay, you're on the team. Let's grow from there. Like for me, it's all about you can go get vets to do whatever the fuck you want. Like when there are people that I'll pull up the tweets for you right now because I love my Dominican son, Chris Duarte, who's older than me, but is still my son. And I actively said on Twitter, do not draft him if that's what you want from a lottery pick. Sign Malik Monk for $8 million a year. Then he took a minimum. And guess what he signed for in Sacramento? Fucking $8 a year on the dot. It's like, just go do that shit instead of wasting a lot. Use the lottery. These are swings. These are bites at the apple. You got a rotisserie chicken that moves super slowly. And there's like one really juicy part of it. And you're like, the skin's not even that bad, yo. I'll just rip off a little. Like, no, you wait and you take the biggest, juiciest bite you can get.
So I'm going to stop you mid-chicken metaphor because I actually think it's important to highlight. I actually think this is how the Knicks approach it. And I think they approach it this way because they're confident. I said this after we traded out of the last draft, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but it looks more correct in hindsight because we're actually good now. But like my whole shtick was like, this kind of stinks as a draft person because I looked at all these guys and wanted them on the Knicks, but like, what they're probably thinking is like, somebody needs to be really good to get playing time over these young kids we have that we really like. And it was kind of a annoying thing to write back then because the young kids who the front office clearly really liked didn't get to play that much, but now they do. And they're really fucking good. And everybody agrees, even Coach Tibbs. So that's what this team is facing, right? Like there's not going to be many developmental minutes unless it's the slot vacated by Obi. That's the one part of the roster that actually has contribute now developmental minutes. And even then, like you said, they might just be like, nah, fuck that. We're going to sign Trey Lyles because we don't want margin for error. We're trying to win. And he can develop in Westchester or whatever. So like the Knicks probably viewed someone like Johnny Davis, who a lot of us liked, as like, oh, this is a nice double, but we're not in the draft for doubles in this situation. We're in it for triples and home runs. And if this guy isn't exciting enough to make Wes run around screaming shirtless, then we're not, this is not our cup of tea. Right. And then, the Wizards took Johnny and fucked up his shot, which is a whole nother podcast. And I don't want to talk about it because it makes me mad, but I still believe in you, Johnny. He's hooping better lately. I don't know if the shot is better, but the less we say about that, the better. Anyway, I think that's how they approach it. And it's everybody will draw that line in a different place, right? Like for you and me and many others, there's a couple of players like Tari or Jalen Williams who to us, they were in front of the line. They were like, okay, you're not just drafting them to hit a double. Like this is actually a home run swing. And it's like a meatball down the middle of the plate. Like,
well, the Knicks saw Tari as a swing too, because I had Mark Berman on draft class and I asked him, knowing the Knicks have been looking for a big wing forever, I said, if Tari Eason and Johnny Davis are both there at 11, who is the pick? And he said it. He didn't just say Johnny Davis. He said they would go with a safer bet like Davis than a project like Tari. And I didn't think Tari was a project. And as he hits contested threes against the New York Knicks, as we're doing this pod, I
People
think,
conflate unpolished with project, and those are not the same.
yeah, project is like Uzman.
Right.
That's a project. Tari was a prospect. Just because he didn't come in the league an NBA player doesn't mean he's a project. There's something in the middle, prospect, draft, prospect. And
he's one of the best players on Houston. If they played him more, they would win more, but that's not their goal, so they're not playing more.
I'm just going to say he's the best player on Houston right now.
He might be.
He is the best player on Houston right now today. He is. And to me, him and J-Dub, I had them 10 and 11, I loved those guys and I was too low on them. I should have had them 6 and 7, damn it. Whatever. They're great. To me, Taylor Hendricks is this year's Tari, where everyone's like, well, he's a project. No, he's not. He can be good. He just won't be great from day one. Right. That's why I think a team like the Knicks could draft him and send him to Westchester for half the year, and it wouldn't be the end of the world. But
it's also why I think they could the Knicks give their kids narrow roles, which is both frustrating and helpful in its own way. There are times where we wish they expanded the roles faster, right? Like with Quickly being the number one case. Quentin Grimes is quickly approaching that, where it's like, all right, dude, we can take the training wheels off now. He can do other stuff, right? Like he doesn't have to just only drive from the corner. And these guys, like Tay Hendricks, if he's in the Obi role, where it's like, okay, we're gonna give you training wheels. Just all you have to do is play defense, rebound, hit these corner threes, relocate, hit those threes, and occasionally get an offensive rebound and a dunk. He would be fucking awesome at that, even though he still probably would get confused by some pick and roll coverages because he's a 19-year-old, and he'd be similar to Obi in that way, in that Obi sometimes doesn't read what's happening and he strays too far or too close, and he's still kind of figuring out where to push and pull in that sense. But like, he could play an narrow role day one, and that's not because he's some polished super veteran like presence. It's because if you give a rookie an narrow role, it makes it easier for them to do it. Like, that's just how coaching works. So I could totally see it. Max and Jet, man. I spent the early part of the season when those two were killing it, thinking there was just no shot for us to get that, because I thought we'd be picking in the 20s and they'd be in the lottery, and they might be in the lottery, but our pick might just be that high from Dallas, thankfully. I want to go to two other dudes to close us out, and that's Grady Dick and Jordan Hawkins. Two, arguably, there's so many good shooters in this class, but there's very strong arguments that those are the two best shooters.
I was gonna say those are the two of them ones that it's like, oh yes, he can shoot definitively.
Yeah. It's just you just assume like it's going in. Like I just be shocked when it doesn't go in. They're like that. The other guy who's like that is my son Bryce, but I'm also like, he's my irrational love affair player for this class. So let's put him aside for now and focus on these two dudes.
Zach Blatter told me like a month ago, he was doing a graphic for something, and he was like, yo, I swear, like, Prez is in love with this guy, Bryce Sensabaugh. Who is this? And I was like, you got to check him out, man. He's cool, but I'm not with Prez on being that in love with him, but he's very cool. He's the shot maker of this draft class. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, every year there's 2 or 3 guys who I just tweet about with such force that I bring half of Knicks Twitter with me just because they have no one else to look to. Now they have you and your pod, but I had that shit cornered for a minute. So Sharif,
yeah, you took the Spencer Perlman role of, I like this guy, so now everyone else does.
I was on Knicks film school. I had Macri on the Grant Riller wagon, and I haven't been invited back since. Why you think that is, bro? He's like, I'm getting only professionals from now on, man. That was too bad of a strikeout. That was an 0 for 10 night, which I'm not even mad at.
I listened to that pod, man. I remember that pod, man.
I won't get in. I've talked on other pods about what I've learned from the Grant Riller miss. And there was definitely some lessons learned, and I'll leave it at that. But these two guys, Hawkins and Grady, are exceptional shooters, and one is taller, one is shorter.
Then I was gonna say they're neither is 5'10", so
Yeah,
Riller and Cooper territory is out the question here for us.
Yeah, neither is 5'10", neither plays in a WAC conference, and neither thinks that neither both of them have irrational confidence. I'll put it, not even irrational. Both of them just have insane confidence. If you want to know how Grady Dick rolls, just check out his Instagram. It is the funniest. This is a human who has the utmost belief in himself. All his posts are fucking hilarious. Teenager taking swaggy pics kind of shit. It's probably the kind of shit you would do if you had a burner and and you knew you had like $1 million coming down the pipeline. It's hilarious. And Jordan Hawkins, I mean, you see, yeah, that's like a tame Grady Dick fucking post for Instagram. And Jordan Hawkins is a different kind of confidence. He's just a buzzsaw on the court. He has unlimited motor, and when he has it going, it's just at the college level. It's just nobody's running with him. Like he's in better shape than whoever he's playing. Yeah, look at this man. He's a legend.
He's in a robe in front of a fireplace with what looks like a luxury cat. That's not a normal cat. That's a fucking $10,000.
That's a super villain cat, bro. Right.
That's a Wilson Fisk ass cat, man.
If I had to rank like which prospects it would be the most epic movie for them to be a New York Knick, he would easily, or no, Wemby would always be number one. But like after that, Grady clears everyone easy.
Well, Grady, like when he beat Indiana at home, it wasn't even on the road. He posted, "Who's your daddy?"
Yeah.
This guy is insane. Like
he would literally become like, it might be, if he was on the Knicks, it might be like an Icarus situation. He might fly too close to the sun and like hop on a coke addiction by like 21 and just flame out. Like
what?
He would just be too lit. You can't rule it out, bro.
How did we get here? When did Grady Dick become Joakim Noah?
I'm just saying they got very similar energy, except Noah is a little bit more of that, that spiritual. Shout out Joe Noah, my high school classmate, Joe Noah. He was actually, you didn't know that?
What the fuck?
Yeah, dude, he did his PG year at where I went to high school in Jersey.
Oh my god!
After he was in Poly Prep in New York,
That's crazy.
He went to high school in Jersey, and we won the state championship with him.
Wow.
Yeah, dude. He was
I have a friend that was around with him in Gainesville, but
I mean, I didn't know him like that. I was younger than him, so
right.
I mean, we were like, it's so funny to like watch. Like we played pickup and shit like that, and he was Joakim Noah, so it was exactly how you imagine it. He would just be there to just hang out because he was bored, and he would just be like shooting knuckleball threes, and they'd just all go in. And then with that, yeah, with his weird shot, and then on the court for the actual games, it was just like Florida. He was an electric, unlimited motor, just unstoppable, like god, just force of nature. Anyway,
yeah.
Grady Hawkins, confidence, shooters. Critically, Grady Dick is 6'8", 6'9", maybe. He's pretty tall. Jordan Hawkins only 6'5", which is fine for a guard, okay for a shooting guard, maybe even a little below average. Both of them are very skinny. They're both in incredible shape, but they're just both very skinny. So both of them could stand to put on a little more strength. I think there's some varied opinions on. I think Grady is in everybody's lottery for the most part. There's a couple of people I know who have him outside the lottery, and they're of the opinion that it's just like it's good, but like to go back to what you said before, it's like, are you sure you couldn't just go get a free agent, right? Like, what does the actual upside look like here? And then for Jayhawk, it's more like, are we sure? Like the big concern seems to be like, okay, he's an elite shooter, but what's he doing inside the arc Is that inside the arc stuff dependable in the NBA at that size with his very slight build, right? He's not the jacked kind of football player looking dude like Quentin is, who's also a 6'5" sniper, but Quentin is, you can't push Quentin around. Well, you can push Quentin around, but you got to be like a power forward or something to do it. So it's very hard.
Yeah.
So one friend of the pod, Stacy Patton, the other Pod Strickland co-host, put it well when he's a big fan of both of them, but his whole thing is like, even if you're low on Jayhawk, can you really have like 15 spots separating these guys when they play like the same role just because of height? And he wasn't saying that to like diminish Grady. He was saying like, if that's the reason, then that might be legit. Like, because 6'9" is fucking tall, right? Like we've talked about it. Obi is 6'9", Julius Randle 6'9", Paolo is 6'9". That's fucking tall. Taylor Hendricks is 6'9". So
Grady isn't like 6'8", 6'7", 6'8".
Nah, he's at least 6'8".
You think he measures up like 6'9"? I think 6'8" is the tallest we'll get, but that's still tall.
Yeah, maybe it's just because he's like narrow and kind of lanky. So
I think the lankiness makes him look tall. I think he'll measure up at like 6'8". We'll see. Yeah. Maybe he comes in at fucking 6'9.5", and I'm like, holy shit. But
with his high release, he shoots tall, and then on some of his layups, like you talked about it before, he's not like, it's not a question of whether he can get above the rim. It's just when does he deploy it, kind of. And because on some layups and cuts and dunks, like he gets up there, and it's like, oh, this is not RJ Barrett trying to like finesse a shot in. Like he's placing the ball like towards the middle of the square, and then just, of course, it's going in, right? Like that's what you do when you're tall. Layups become easier, full stop. So where are you at on Grady? And then I know you mentioned to me before the pod you wanted to talk about Jayhawk because despite UConn being a buzzsaw, you just don't seem to get the hype.
I don't get like the top 15 shit. That's like, to me, that's too far. But I don't know. Like, I will probably have him and Grady around the 14 range, right? Like you know, as of right now, I've got like I kind of want to put Max and Jet. Nah, but if Grady, I got to see.
I put Max and Jet move together on my board. I can't. They got to move together. They're like brother. They're like twins.
They are next to each other on my board with nobody separating them. So I'm glad we agree on that.
Anytime I move one, I'm like, I can't.
Like, yeah, you can't justify. It's all in or not in. I completely, this is
like separating the Morris brothers.
I completely feel you. I completely feel you on this. But like right now, the guys I have between Grady and Jayhawk are Max, Jet, and Jalen Hood-Schifino. And like more will come. I'm sure Bryce will settle in probably between those two. If I had to guess.
He'll hear the disrespect. Don't worry.
Kobe Buffkin
he's rising up my board too, man.
Might sneak ahead of Jayhawk though. You know what I mean? Like there are guys that I would sneak ahead, you know, and it's like at that point, I'm like,
that tier is just fucking deep,
loaded, right? So it's like, to me, I can't
even hate.
I could have Grady 16 and Jayhawk 18 and be happy with how my board looks. Like I don't think it's some crime to not see both of these guys as lottery or whatever. Like
this is what I've told people in the Strickland Discord. I'm like, I can give you the numbers on my 1 to 30, but like this year more than ever, the numbers are not going to help you because who I have at 14 and who I have at 26 are like, you could probably flip-flop them without batting an eye. And that might be I don't know exactly what the range is, but like the point is, like you said, like just because you have Grady 16 or Jayhawk 20, that's not the same insult that it would be in a normal year.
No. And it's like, what is Hawkins good at to you that's not shooting? Like good.
So to me, everything stems from his shooting, and you can have. We're gonna get real nuanced here. So like, Jordan Hawkins to me is after Bryce, or maybe tied with Bryce as the most versatile shooter, because nobody else runs off screens in the way that he does, simply because like you can't do that. Like most colleges just aren't going to have that as part of their offense. And just like most NBA teams, like how many Rip Hamilton, Kyle Korver, JJ Redick sets do you see? Like guys come off movement now, but it's never like this is all they fucking do, like back in 2008. And that's what
Hawkins caught a Rip Hamilton comp from me on Dream.
he's got a lot of that same classic off screen. Like somebody in our Strickland draft Twitter DM just posted, it was one of those straight on camera angles, like those like shitty NBA 2K camera angles, and you could just clearly see, it was like those videos of Steph, you just clearly see all the places he's fucking running. And I just got tired watching that, and I'm like, man, Jesus, like that's a different thing to like run around full speed for like 10 seconds and then just catch and fucking shoot that shit. Bryce doesn't do that. Jet doesn't do that. Grady doesn't do that. And because he can catch it on the move like that, and this is the key to me, his handle is better than people realize. So he can catch it, and it's not just shoot or pass. He can catch hezzy and then drive, or catch pump, cross. He can dribble with his left hand. So I think his closeout attack package off of movement is really, that's where he shines to me. And I think he doesn't really take a lot of mid-range shots, and he's still kind of figuring out driving, but he's gotten way better at driving as the year went on. So here's a stat for you. I forget who posted it on Twitter, but in November, his free throw rate was really terrible. It was like 11 or something. And then since December 1st, his free throw rate is 36, which is higher than RJ Barrett's was at Duke. So like he does that because he just lights defense's pants on fire running around. And then once they're panicked, he's like, oh, pump fake, hezzy. And then just drives, and he has some of that IQ foul grifter in him where he's like, he knows how to jump into dudes and stuff now. So that's to me where, aside from shooting, he excels. And I know like if I have to spend 5 minutes explaining it, it's not the same as like,
right. But you're saying,
yeah, you know what I mean?
But listen, what you're saying he excels at doesn't come up on the stat sheet. It's a means to an ends on the stat sheet, which is like the little Prez bait shit, that little in between shit, that mastery of the margins is kind of what you're talking about to me, is like that little shit that like good players do it, great ones do it, good ones don't. Like those little things, he just kind of gets it all. So you kind of just see the development curve of a really good play. Like I get it.
He's just the other skills that make great shooters great players, he's ahead of the curve on that. That's the best way I could put it. Matter of fact, I need to write that down. That was a bar. So like that was
there you go. That's what I'm saying. You see him on the curve of a better player than he looked like
for other shooters the same age. But that being said, the one thing I will say that makes me a little bit nervous about, and him on the Knicks would be a great example of that, is like you actually have to invest some of your team into that, right? Like if you say Jordan Hawkins, go do Quentin Grimes stuff, you are fucking wasted. Just go sign whoever, right? Just go fucking sign some shooter, because like we've talked about this with Grimes and with Quickly, both of whom actually had a lot of, not quite as much as Jordan Hawkins, but they came off screens quite a bit in college, and they do it a little bit now on the Knicks. They've slowly do more of it. Like we're seeing more of the handoff kind of run around stuff with iHeart and IQ, and Grimes is getting more 3-point opportunities above the break now. Now that his legs are back under him. So you're seeing Tibbs and the kids kind of explore that. But you gotta, with someone like Hawkins, if you draft him and you don't say, nah, we're gonna, like, whenever he's ready to play, it might not be our year one, but whenever he's ready to play, we're gonna run him. We're gonna run opponents to death, like Kyle Korver style. Then if you don't do that, you might as well just fucking it's not guaranteeing his failure, but you're just severely hamstringing yourself in a way that is probably very counterproductive and certainly very dumb. Whereas someone like Grady, you don't have to worry about that concern. You're not worried about like, well, like, is the coach gonna optimize him or what? Like, no, he's 6'9". You just put him what the fucking 2, the 3, the 4, it doesn't fucking matter. And you want him to stand in the corner, cool. You want him to stand 40 feet away above the break, cool. You want him to just take threes in transition, cool. Like all of this stuff, you don't have to be like some offensive mad scientist coordinator to come up with. Like every team, he can fit within every team's offense as is. Teams would not have to change what they do. Grady just come through, take IG photos and cash threes and finish at the rim and make good decisions as a connector. You're going to get that. So that's why I totally get folks who are, understandably higher on him beyond just the height. I'm higher on him than Jayhawk, but I do think there's something, I don't know, man, that movement stuff is just, I can't shake it. That's so special to me. But I mean, so is Grady, man. Grady's a fucking problem.
Listen, I don't know how to like. I'm not telling you what to do with your board, but like, don't be afraid to put Hawk ahead of Grady. Like, I think Grady's decision making is super over. Like, not just it's understated how bad it is. Like, he's really all. And I know he's young, but like, if you think Hawkins can do that shit now and well, why bet on someone to figure it out? You know what I mean? Like,
I actually like Grady's some of the reads he has are like his pendulum swings very far in both directions, like within a game.
I feel like the Jason Kidd, that Jason Kidd reverse layup, that one play of like the literal backwards circus. I feel like Grady thinks he can make that happen regularly. I feel like that's his thought process out there. It's like, yo, fuck it. This is what's going down because I feel like it. And obviously an NBA coach will shit on him for that. Like, imagine Steve Clifford gets his hands on Grady Dick, right? But like, we'll see.
More, yeah. His some of the shots he takes, I'm like, you didn't have to make that quite as difficult. But what I really like from Grady is some of the passing he does as a connector. Like, you talk about like skills that shooters can have that make shooters good basketball players. I think he has some really, I think he's a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of some of the passes he can see. And part of that is because he's just tall, right? Like, you can, if you're a small forward size wing, you're probably going to see some more passes that are harder to spot if you're 6'4" or something like that. So, and part of that is Kansas offense was just like, in a lot of ways, it had him doing things he'll be doing in the NBA. So he just kind of got used to like, oh, I have a beastly guy who draws a lot of attention as my teammate, and I'm playing off that. And I have to, sometimes spray it out to my teammates and stuff. So like, his translation is just smooth. And although he definitely has some moments where he has too much dip on his chip, he's not starting at square one in terms of decision making, which for me is big because he's also a young freshman, right? Like, Jayhawk is a sophomore and Grady is one of the younger players. I think he'll be 19, like barely on draft day. So yeah, he'll have to go through that learning curve, but that's okay, right? Like you said with Hendricks.
Yeah, I think guys like Kyle Kuzma said the NBA has a patience problem, and I don't think that's the case. I retweeted that tweet because I agree with the sentiment, but I think the problem is more the NBA has a problem with draft age and interpreting it correctly. Like, it's not patience because a guy can be 22 or 19 when they could, like, there are different circumstances, right? But I feel like years of experience, I feel like that, or maybe it's a patience problem, but it's not age related. It's just years of experience in the league related. Because you could be 22 and then in year 4 break out at 26 and everyone's like, oh my God, he's just a different player. Like, no, you just decided he was closer to his ceiling because you didn't take into stock the fact that someone could have learned more from their coach in 1 year than they did from theirs in 4. Like, you just didn't want to think about that, So it's like, I think the patience problem is more with just years of experience or reps, total reps in the league, as opposed to like, oh, they're this old, so they're this whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And the example I give to people is actually right here on the Knicks center rotation, right? They're all basically the same age, Sims, Mitch, and Ihart, but they all have wildly different paths and years of experience. And because of that, despite them being the same age and relatively young, they're all at vastly different parts of the curve in terms of defensive and offensive processing. And that's just the years matter, but what happens in the years matters. So I'm with you. I think it's not quite a patience problem. It's just like you said, the league is really fucking stacked, and there's a lot of circumstances that unfortunately are beyond a player's control. So you're gonna get more until we have expansion. You're probably gonna get more and more players who are like signing with their second teams in better situations for their skill sets, and then they're really good even as role players, and other people who had them on their first team are going to be like, what the fuck, why do we let them go? And it's like, yeah, dude, they couldn't play because there were other good players on your team or something like that. Like, we'll probably see it happen with Obi Toppin, right? Like, we'll go somewhere that goes up and down the court and shoots threes, and he's gonna get a zillion dunks and roll man reps, and it's gonna be like, wow, look at this, isn't that interesting, right? Like, people around the league will say that. So that's just kind of how it goes. God damn, quickly is wilding. I'm not watching.
Did you see you saw my tweet? Oh.
No.
I tweeted 11 seconds ago about quickly, so that's why that's why I asked. I'm not that self-centered, don't worry.
And Dallas is winning. Let's go. Keep that pick, baby. All right. We've been going for a long fucking time. I might have to split this joint into two parts, like Avengers fucking Endgame, bro.
Well, listen, when draft Strickland and draft class come together, that's true. The notepad is out. The pen is out. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Like, this is not the abridged coverage right here.
Side note for you that I'll include as if you're a fan of both draft Strickland and draft class, this will be my closing fun fact. The draft Strickland logo originally read class. And it ended up not making it through the selection process at Knicks Film School, but I loved that logo, and I told Zachary to not let it die. And so I am very glad and happy to see how well it fits you. He changed the font. It is different than the one but it's like he made it yours, and I love it better than I liked mine. So it was so nice almost to see that next to me the whole time, because that kid Zach is really fucking good at what he does, and it just reminds me that we both, we have the same graphics guy, but we've got the best graphics guy in the biz, because the two best Knicks shows out there both have his logo. So
this is like when you're watching like rap documentaries, and they're like, Hove passed on this beat, and then Ludacris rapped on this beat, and then it was a great hit and it changed his career. But what could have been if Hove was on it or whatever? Like,
yeah, I'm sure I'm Hove and you're Ludacris. Yeah,
right, exactly. That's how it works.
More like you're Hove and I'm Lil Tecca. I don't know.
I'm not gonna pretend to know who that is. So.
That was the point.
Okay. Well, I like to consider myself more in touch with Gen Z rap than the rest of the fucking old people.
I'll send you some of his songs. He's a seasonal artist. That kid Tecca, he's like 20 right now. He comes out only for the summer, drops the song of the summer, and then disappears for a year. It's awesome.
Where's he from?
I want to say Long Island.
Okay. As long as it's New York, that's cool.
But yeah, it might be Queens. Oh yeah, he's originally from Queens, and then like Long Island tried claiming him, so that's what I associated. But he's from Queens.
Good try, Long Island. Not on this podcast.
They made it like 10 seconds before I realized. Yeah, no, that was.
They had 10 seconds. Just enjoy it. Sorry, Macri. Well, Macri left Long Island too, so whatever. Shout out to him.
Yeah, he said he'd rather be in Brooklyn.
Yeah, right. I get it.
I'll end the slander there.
Kris, tell the people where they can find you. I know for the YouTubers, it's on the screen, but for everyone else, let them know where you do what you do, because you're in multiple places on the internet right now these days.
I do things. They can be found. The things include covering the New York Knicks. You'll see me at not one, but 2 games this week with a press pass, providing the best coverage I can for WFUV Sports, the voice of Fordham University. So check that out. Go to my Twitter. Don't bother trying to spell my name. Look in the description of the podcast. Look at the video. Don't try to spell it. Don't hurt your head. Just copy that in there. At Kris Pursiainen, KRISPURSIAINEN, and there you will find my new freshly released big board, my first top 10 look at this class for the draft class show for Knicks Film School. You can catch me live Tuesday, and if this is out Thursday, then that'll be the next Tuesday. So whenever, what is that, March 4th? Yeah, March 4th. Sorry, April 4th. God. This year is flying. I almost said 2022. April 2023 is a real month that exists. And on its first Tuesday at 7 p.m., I'll be live on YouTube talking the draft. So any questions you've got for me about my board or things I said to Prez that you think are abhorrent or whatever it is, come ask me about it. Come yell at me about it.
Yeah, Villanova fans, come yell at him.
and other than that, just support the draft content you're getting from Prez. Even if you see the pod Draft Strickland pop up in your feed and you know you don't have time to listen, go retweet on Twitter, go do whatever. Prez is doing amazing work. And if you are a fan of the Strickland, I'm going to put it like this. Enjoy Prez while you have him. Enjoy Prez while you have him, because I assume that Prez's day job is going to, if he wants it to, maybe have to take a little rain check for a front office gig for a little bit. So scouting gig for a little bit. So enjoy Prez while he's allowed to tweet these thoughts publicly, because I don't think that'll last for too long. Other than that, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man, no problem. And I don't think listeners, you have to worry about that, because if there's one thing I know about scouting is that's a lot of work that doesn't pay well. So you can count me out. I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing and doing this for fun on the side. You can find Kris where he said you can find him. Go follow him. Go listen to his shows. Go listen to him broadcast and read his stuff and all that goodness. Kris, thank you again. Really appreciate you as always. And listeners, thank you for this over 2-hour marathon. Jesus fucking Christ. This is the longest Draft Strickland ever, I'm pretty sure. So thank you for, if you sat through this. Thank you if you sat through part of this. Really appreciate it. And we will see you next time.